Hello, what's up in there, guys? We're here, the 3 Topics Tamer, and have a pretty interesting requested top 5 list video to share with you guys today. Now, normally I like to stick to more entertainment content in the forms of, video games or movies or just anything entertainment in general. But every once in a while, I get an idea to do a requested top list video that allows you guys to get to know a little bit more about me and my personal interests. And so when one of my viewers actually sent the idea of he wanted to know what some of my favorite music albums of all time were, I actually thought this was actually a pretty good opportunity, so I think that's what we'll do today. So if you do happen to enjoy this video by then, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Keep tracking me on my future videos. And remember, if you guys have any ideas, future request videos, or discussion videos, or ranking videos, or just reaction videos, because I actually haven't done one of this in a while, please let me know what you would like to see in the comments down below, and I will try to get it filmed as soon as possible. Now, before I start, I would just like to give a major shout out to Mr. Vampire A, or I'll just say Vampire A, for sending this idea. So just so you know, this video would not be up here without you. So starting off with number 5 on my list, and before I start, I just want to say I decided to stick to strictly top 5 because I couldn't come up with 10, and if I did do 10, it would literally just be a lot of mixtures of Linkin Park and Michael Jackson albums. So to keep things fair, I decided I was only going to pick one album per band or singular artist. So those are the rules. But starting off with number 5 is the only album from a band on my list that I did not inherit from another member of my family. Spots 4 through 1, each one of those artists or bands I got from one of my family members, but number 5 is the only one that I discovered on my own, and I've been a fan for quite a ton of time. But number 5 on my list is going to have to go to Poets of the Fall and their album titled Temple of Thought. I do believe this came out in 2012. I've been a fan of Poets of the Fall. I think they're a really underrated band, but I've been a fan of theirs since I discovered their hit song Late Goodbye in Max Payne 2. And for whatever reason, which I'm not complaining because I've always loved it, but Poets of the Fall has typically always had a place in Remedy games. I think all their Remedy games, when you go to Max Payne 2 or Alan Wake, they've been introduced in some fashion, and I've always liked it, and that's allowed me to kind of follow the band over the course of these years. And I just believe that Temple of Thought has a lot of interesting songs that are very, very unique. They always have a way of changing up their style and their direction with every new album, and I just think that out of all the albums that they've released, this is the one I think has the most songs, for me personally, that I really enjoy the most. I'm not sure it would work for other people, but I always felt that Poets of the Fall was really one of those underrated bands that you really have to look deep in order to discover just how talented this band is. It's got a lot of amazing songs, and I just think that Temple of Thought probably has the most songs in one particular item that I've enjoyed the most. I've liked all their albums, but I think that this one, out of I think 12 or 13 songs that they have on this one certainly has the one that has the most amount of songs I really enjoy listening to, and I do have probably the most of them on my personal music player. So I think that's why I would put Poets of the Fall's Temple of Thought as number 5 on my list. Going into number 4, I'm gonna have to go with 1990s Phil Collins But Serious album. Now, Phil Collins I inherited from my dad, and what I really like about the album of But Seriously is that this apparently was not only the one album that allowed Phil Collins to win the Grammy for Album of the Year, it was actually the #1 song in the UK for I think 15 consecutive weeks, and it came out in 1990, which is the year I was born, and I just so happened to be in the UK when this album came out. So I have a kind of weird sort of connection. I think years later they actually kind of remastered this song and made some slight additions. So I was able to listen to the remastered version, and I thought that was pretty good. But I think Phil Collins, without question, is probably my favorite artist outside of Michael Jackson from the 80s. And I personally believe that the 80s, without question, has probably the best decade of music. It certainly has my personal favorite of the iconic songs. But I think that But Seriously, it has a lot of classic songs, just amazing. Another Day in Paradise, which I believe is Phil Collins' most iconic song, and a bunch of other great songs in general. This is always an album I always tend to go back and listen to around the time of my dad's birthday, which is typically at the beginning of August. And it just kind of takes me back to a much more simpler time in life. I mean, just just so many relaxing songs. That's one thing I'll say about 80s. 80s, at least for me, has not only the most creative songs, but relaxing songs in general. So I always felt that I had a real strong personal connection to this particular Phil Collins album. And he's made a number of great albums that I've really enjoyed that my dad introduced me to when I was growing up. But this is the one for me that always I stuck to the most, which is why Phil Collins' But Seriously is number 4 on my list. Taking the number 3 spot on my list is going to have to go to 3 Days Grace's Life Starts Now, and I actually got this band surprisingly from my younger sister. She has a very, very interesting taste in music, and this album she actually introduced me to, which is strange because she's younger than I am, so it's kind of funny. I will say this: I would say I'm a bigger fan of 3 Day Grace's older albums. I actually haven't really had much interest listening to like their last 2 albums, I believe, in the form of Explosions in 2022 and Outsider in 2018. I think they switched their lead singer in, I believe, 2012, and I think that was like the last album that I kind of like attempted to listen to, but I really am more drawn to their first 3 albums in the form of just 3 Days Grace, the first album, 1X, which if I was doing a top 10 list video, I think that 1X and Life Starts Now would definitely be in that list. But I do think that Life Starts Now, the reason I like this one the most is this is the only 3 Days Grace album out of the current 7 that they have that every single song on that album is a banger. Even with fantastic albums, there may be like 1 or 2 songs that I just don't too much care much for. That is not the case with Life Starts Now. Life Starts Now came out at the perfect time. This album came out in 2009, so I had just gotten out of high school and gone into college. So this was really a perfect time for me to be introduced to this band. And this album has just always stuck out to me. It's got just a lot of really, really great songs. And I think for me personally, this is the period where I think 3 Days Grace was at the peak of their talent. Just my personal opinion. It kind of dipped after that point, but I do think that Life Starts Now, in my opinion, is without question my favorite album of theirs and their strongest album, which is why it'll like easily take the number 3 spot on my list. Taking the number 2 spot, we have to go to the king of pop, and without question my favorite solo artist of all time in the form of Michael Jackson, and he has so many incredible albums. But if you had to put a gun to my head and told me to pick just one album that I could listen to for the rest of my life, it's very easily going to have to go to 2002, what am I thinking? I think it's 1992's Dangerous. As much as I love things like Off the Wall and Thriller and Bad and History and heck, I really enjoy Invincible, Dangerous is the one that I enjoy the most. For a lot of the same reasons as 3 Day Grace's Life Starts Now, in terms of it has the most amount of songs that I'll enjoy the most, which is kind of crazy because I enjoy so many of Michael Jackson's songs in all of his albums, and there are very, 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 very few songs of his that I don't really care much for. But much like Life Starts Now, this is a good album, which Thriller and Off the Wall also do this, which every song on here is a banger. Every song on here is a banger. Plus, this was the first album that actually came out when I was alive, which is funny. Yeah, I missed Bad by about 3 years, and this one came out like 2 years after I was born, so it does have that. I think, just tone-wise, I think this is kind of Michael Jackson when he kind of mastered his talent. I mean, you could say he did that with Thriller and Bad, but I think this is the one I kind of gravitate more towards, even though technically my favorite song of his is on Thriller. But just so many great songs, iconic songs in this one. This is a fantastic album. It's hard to describe Michael Jackson because of how incredible he was. It's very, very difficult, but just for some reason, Dangerous always sticks out. Plus, I will say this: out of any album cover, Dangerous by far has the most creative and unique looking album I've ever seen of all time. And I thank my mom for introducing me to Michael Jackson, which is why Michael Jackson's Dangerous is going to take the number 2 spot on my list. Now, as much as I love Michael Jackson, if I had to choose between going to a Michael Jackson concert when he was alive or this band's concert when they were really at the peak of their prime, if I had to choose, without question, my number 1 favorite music album of all time, and I've stated this many times on my channel, is going to have to go to Meteor. Now, there's always a bit of a debate as for which album is better between Hybrid Theory and Meteor, but I've always stated that I just think Meteor was really a much more improved, more balanced album than Hybrid Theory. Hybrid Theory is incredible. It's a great album. But I just felt that in terms of songs that were not only incredible, but actually balanced with other incredible songs on this album, it just works. I mean, songs like Numb, Easier to Run. I mean, it's just, man, there's just so many incredible songs. I mean, Don't Stay, Somewhere I Belong, Lying With You, Hit the Floor, Faint, Figure Eight, Breaking the Habit. I mean, this has the highest concentration of all-time favorite Linkin Park songs, and my favorite Linkin Park song of all time, in the form of "Somewhere I Belong," is like the perfect. I like all the previous 5 albums, but there has never been a song like "Somewhere I Belong" that perfectly describes not only my life or my mindset back when I first heard this album when I was a teenager, but my mindset now as a 33-year-old man. I mean, I'm 33 and I'm still trying to find a place where I belong. And Meteor, recently hit like 20 years. Just encapsulate that. It's just the perfect album. It perfectly describes me. And what's crazy is that I actually inherited this band from my older sister, which is very unusual because I have probably the least strongest connection with, out of all my family members, that I have the weakest connection or bond with my older sister. So I find it ironic that the family member that I'm the least closest to is the reason that I'm a Linkin Park fan, or found my favorite album of all time that just kind of perfectly just describes my life at that time, and even in some cases right now. So yeah, Meteora, #1 favorite music album of all time for just too many incredible reasons that I can make a whole video about it. So those are my top 5 favorite music albums. Now, as a chance to get to know some of you guys a little bit more, I would like to know, what are some of your guys' favorite music albums? Give me your top 5, and to keep it fair, keep it to 1 album per artist if you can pull that off. Or if you can't, then just share with me your top 5 albums. So again, I want to thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I'll see you all next time.